So I want to talk about like how it was for me growing up and stuff. And really, I grew up in a time where it was the late 90s, early noughties for me. And in that time, the culture was very, you could say, nihilistic and superficial and shallow. And there was a sense that the world was going to last like this forever and it was never going to change. And especially in the late part of the 90s, just before 9/11, where there was no, particularly here in Britain, there was no sign of anything really bad happening to the world. And it was this time of what you could call infinite prosperity, but around you there was this very kind of shallow, superficial culture, like I just mentioned. There was a spiritual void, and everyone was more concerned with trivial shit like Hollywood movies, reality TV, pop music, Coca-Cola, McDonald's, all this just crap basically. And I could never see that this was going to ever change. It was very much like this is an end of history, so to speak. And really, up until very recently, the world hasn't changed. Even now, it really kind of is still kind of the same, but there is this kind of underground consciousness coming up, which is very different from the one I just mentioned. And I think this is going to basically explode. It's going to explode when things start to get worse than they are now, which is going to happen. I mean, the world we have known really since, you could say, the 80s is going to not last forever. This world of just consumer culture, this world of identifying with shallow, superficial things that don't really actually matter, this world of pop spirituality, if you want to put it that way, it's going to basically evaporate at some point. And I think we're starting to see the start of that. I think it can either go two ways. I think what you could say the globalist elite have planned for us as some sort of transhumanist timeline where we go down and we kind of become something that was not even human anymore. And this can be done in multiple ways. They might, start injecting parts of technology into us, or it might be a complete change in our own psychology. But I don't think this is going to be something that's going to be forced upon us. I think this is going to be something that people are going to buy into. But then there's also an alternative to that. The alternative to that would have to be something a lot more natural, something more deeply rooted. And I say this because I come from a generation which I don't think most people from personally my generation are going to change anything, you know what I mean? I think there'll be a minority of us will influence the change, but I don't think we're going to be the ones to bring about the change. I think the generation younger than my generation, Generation Z, I think it's called, they're going to be the ones who are going to actually manifest the change, whereas the Gen Xers, the millennials, are going to be the ones who will influence them heavily and be kind of like the unformed template of what the Generation Z is going to manifest. And I'm just a guy, I don't have the actual power to implement what I want into the world as an individual. I don't have that, not on a large scale anyway. I can do it in my own life, of course, but I can't influence that on a large scale. But I think for future generations they will more have that power, because I look at the younger generation and they're not as intelligent or as higher in their consciousness as I am now, but they're a lot more intelligent, higher in their consciousness than I was when I was their age. And I do see that as a largely positive thing. I think they have this very strong sense of anti-degeneracy, anti-consumerism, anti-stupidity in such a way, which I look back at my teenage self and it's kind of like you're completely immersed into this world of just, what I look back at as now is just complete idiocy. I mean, it's like there was this culture of just the most superficial, nihilistic attitude you could ever have in life. And I think we're seeing an end of that now in the youth, because I think that's now all become the mainstream. There is nothing to really rebel against that in the same way. So the only way to actually rebel against that is to be something what's almost the opposite of that. And this is kind of creating a more mature generation, I think. A more generation of a more deeper consciousness, more able to see the depth of things at a very young age. However, my advice to the future generations is not to so much try and make changes politically or economically or even religiously, but try and make changes more on a very deep metaphysical level. Look to ancestral wisdom and and see where they went wrong. Try and find the original metaphysical template that was there and work with that more than anything. Because if you're only trying to revive certain paradigms and timelines that no longer work, or never worked really, because they all failed, because their foundations weren't rooted enough or strong enough, then that's also going to fall. I think what we're living in also now is a time of infinite timelines playing themselves out within our own consciousness. So yes, in a sense, we have reached an end of history, an end of a cycle, so to speak. So my question is, where do we go from here? And I can't on my own fully answer that question, because there's certain things I don't even know yet. But that doesn't stop me from wanting to know more.